Hello and welcome to Rise of the Data Cloud. Today's episode features an interview with Mark Stange-Tregear, Vice President of Analytics at Rakuten Rewards. Mark was previously the Director of Analytics at Ebates and the Director of Analytics Services at RealPage. On this episode, Mark talks about how to successfully communicate with both merchants and consumers, the nuances of analyzing consumer data, the future of cloud data analytics, and much more. So please enjoy this conversation between Mark Stange-Tregear, Vice President of Analytics at Rakuten Rewards, and your host, Steve Ham.
So, Mark, it's great to talk to you today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, Rakuten Rewards is a cashback and shopping rewards company, as I understand it. Can you begin by explaining how the business works, including the affiliate networks, and also tell us about the competitive dynamics that Rakuten Rewards faces?
Yeah, absolutely. The company was formerly called Ebates. We rebranded last year. Ebates has been around for a long time. We started back in the late 90s, and we were acquired by Rakuten, which is a very large Japanese company, in 2015. I've been with the company since 2014, and I was brought on board to work on business intelligence systems and analytics, and I've been basically doing that for the company ever since through various tech iterations and various changes and growth spurts within the company. So as you mentioned, the core product that we offer is cashback on online purchases. We are a membership service. So you sign up, you have a Rakuten Rewards account, and then when you go and shop at the various places that you would normally shop online, depending on how much you spend, you'll get a percentage of what you spend back. There's no great mystery to this. In terms of the business model, it can seem a little bit like magic. You know, I go and spend a couple of $100s at Best Buy or Macy's and I'm getting $10 back. How can Rakuten Rewards afford to do that? It isn't mysterious, it isn't magical, but it is a pretty beneficial model where effectively we get paid for member or buyer acquisition from these companies, and then we just hand some of that money back to the consumer in the form of cashback. Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of cashback paid out. We're rapidly heading into the billions of dollars of cashback that's been sent out to our members over the lifetime of the company. And that was billion with a B, not million with an M. We go through millions routinely. So, I think we have a very loyal, very dedicated customer base. And I think, we've earned a lot of money for them over the years, as well as being a pretty beneficial program for our merchant partners because the incentives that we get are based on what people buy. So it isn't a flat advertising fee, and it really does work for everyone involved.
So how many affiliates are there? And also, what's kind of a typical percentage cashback that somebody gets?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if you go onto Rakuten Rewards, you'll see something like 3,000 partners on there, varying from very big name brands, your Macy's, your Best Buys, through various other maybe slightly smaller brands, but still very visible that are a bit more niche. I think about Saks or Tiger Direct Computing. And then, we also work a lot with travel, and we work with a lot of small businesses as well. Brands that are really much more niche or don't have the presence of some of the major merchants in the space. So we try to span pretty much all verticals, and I think we do a pretty good job of that. Work with the majority of the major online retailers in the US, as well as a very large number of smaller ones. Cashback rates can be highly variable. It can be anything from less than 1% in some situations, although that's relatively unusual. And it's, all the way up to, blockbuster deals where it's 20, 25 kind of percent. A typical range would be in the 5 to 10 on any given day. It usually, unless you're out buying a new car or something, the amount of cashback you earn on one transaction probably isn't life-changing. The real impact comes when you use this repeatedly over time and you suddenly realize just how much you're spending online, how much you're getting back. I mean, we routinely issue checks in the hundreds of dollars to regular consumers.
Right. How many customers do you have?
In terms of active user base, we tend to focus on a number. It's certainly in the millions. It depends a little bit on how active you want to count it. We have a couple of million very dedicated users. We have, you can probably count up to more like 10 million reasonably active members. And then we've got a long tail of people who use us occasionally.
Yeah. And how about the competitive dynamics of the industry? Do you face a lot of competition?
I think it's a competitive space, and it's also a space where there's a lot of innovation. I mean, like I said before, there's a strong value proposition for both on both the B2B side and the B2C side in our industry, and that makes for a fairly fruitful environment where businesses can grow and flourish and try to find a slightly different edge. So there are competitors in the space. I think Rakuten Rewards has been around for a long, long time and has a very substantial slice of market share. We also own ShopStyle, which is a similar kind of value proposition, but more focused on the high-end fashion space. And there are other competitors out there. There are competitive products, and clearly we keep like any good business, we keep an eye on them and we watch what they're up to, as I'm sure they watch what we're up to. And a lot of this, though, is about the relationship with the other businesses we work with the brand names that we work with, and also with our consumers. And having those conversations now certainly with some merchants, we've been working with them for 20 years. And for consumers, some of them have been around for 20 years. And I think, we really focus as a company on that relationship building directly with the B2B side of things, but also that really is the way that we think about our communication with our members. We don't tend to think of them as just sort of guest buyers who we may never see again. We really do think about them as members and trying to understand what they want and need from our platform and what would support them in the long run.
Now, we're speaking in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis, and retailing is in a chaotic situation. A lot of brick and mortar retailing is collapsing, and there's really highly varied demand for online retailing. It's not just a steady thing. At the same time, you mentioned a minute ago, travel is one of your big customers. So you're in the middle of a maelstrom here. And I want to know, how is the situation impacting your business, and how is the company using data and analytics to deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't disagree with the use of the term chaotic there. I think that is it. I mean, clearly this is unprecedented. And you're right to call out. I mean, we do work with a lot of travel merchants. Travel is not something that people are doing in the same volumes, clearly, right now. Although we are still seeing, some business through that channel. It was impacted, and in other spaces, we're seeing different dynamics as people do shift shopping that they may have done in person or may have done traditionally in person online. Mm-hmm. So yeah, without question, right? It's a complicated time. It's a chaotic time. It is impacting us in a variety of different ways, some negative, some positive. I think to get to the meat of your question about the data and analytics, I think for me, the key point, and what I've always tried to do within business intelligence and really had as the core of what I and with my team we're trying to build at Rakuten Rewards, is visibility and insight. And I think that has really been drawn to the fore right now as this situation gets more chaotic. In the normal run of business, maybe day to day, you kind of know what's going to happen, right? We're a big enough business that there aren't usually massive fluctuations on a day-to-day basis. You get into a situation like this where there are a lot of variables, there's a lot of different factors going on, a lot of parts of the business are moving in other directions, and it really calls to attention the fact that you need good visibility into what's happening. And for a company that drives itself on its data, as we do, what that means is that you need fast, reliable, easy to access information about what is happening. And I think that's what we've been able to do. I mean, we are watching the dynamics between the different retail verticals on a daily basis. We're watching the dynamics between different parts of the country on a daily basis. We're watching the shifts as people at home more, and are they using their mobile devices or mobile apps less and maybe focusing more on desktop applications again? Mm-hmm. Are people taking longer to make decisions because they've just got more hands on the time? Or are we seeing more what look like very quick purchase decisions because, I don't know, maybe it's people with small kids or something have got less time on their hands all of a sudden? And I think for me, the key here is to have that clean, reliable, up-to-the-minute data so that you can understand what's happening and so that you can then make plans to respond as appropriately as possible. I know as well that in working with our merchant partners in particular, our B2B relationships, being able to understand the dynamics, being able to talk to them about what we're seeing, what they're seeing, and how we can work together to make sure that the consumer experience is good, has really come into play. And again, just because of the way our company operates, that has been largely focused on understanding the numbers and the data and making sure that we're fully understanding the situation and the dynamics, and that we don't have to go back and question or ask questions of about the quality of the data or wait too long to get the insights that we need.
Yeah, it seems like your company is in a real enviable position because you have those close relationships with your affiliates, with the retailers and other businesses on one end, and you can collaborate with them and compare notes with them. And on the other end, it's a membership organization, so you know the customer. So, I mean, you kind of have this wonderful view of both ends of your market. How are you able to take advantage of that?
I like the use of the word enviable. Sometimes it's easy to feel a little bit of pressure there. We try and maintain very strong relationships in two different directions, and that can be difficult. But I think I feel comfortable speaking for myself, at least, when I say, I don't really see a downside to it. It may be hard work sometimes, right, to make sure that you're communicating appropriately to all your consumer base and to all of the merchants. But I think it does put us in a pretty good position to see those market dynamics. And I think it does mean that we're able to respond, to have intelligent conversations about, with the merchants about what we see happening in the marketplace and what would really work for them and by extension for our membership base in terms of offers or in terms of other deals that they want to put out there, where they can potentially help in this situation as well by offering a little bit more incentive or by curating the experience a little bit more. Yeah. And not easy to have that volume of conversations and to think about how that works in such a chaotic situation. But I do think that that's a key goal for us and something that we've been working hard on.
That makes total sense. Now, you're the vice president of analytics. Mm-hmm. If you could describe kind of what your day job is like, what your day-to-day job is like, and what are the main challenges you're facing, not just during COVID, but, in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my role has adapted and changed over the years as the company's grown. We went through very rapid growth and is still growing pretty rapidly. So I think it's an ever-evolving situation. My day-to-day job, primarily I serve two main functions in my team, and that is to provide kind of expert level understanding of the data that's available and how to use the systems that we have within the company. Also offering analytical insight across what you would think of as traditional sort of business analytics, product analytics, database analytics, and data science. Effectively working directly with business groups around the company, everyone from sales and marketing to finance and product and everyone in between, audit and everyone in between, to really allow the company to get hold of the data that they need and to make sure that it's quality data. And that's one side of it, is almost like an analytics service organization. I think the other big part of my role, and this is not a role that you'll hear described a lot in the industry, but is as the product manager for the business intelligence solutions at an enterprise level. So we run a combined team of analysts and engineers. I have a peer called Joji John who leads the engineering side of things. But this isn't a traditional, business analysts sitting within the business teams and then an IT group running the business intelligence tools. We run that all as a combined team, and we have done since I joined the company. That puts me and the analytics side of the team effectively in the role of product managers. And what I mean by that is that we do a lot of the upfront work thinking about what can our systems do, what can our systems not do, where are they working, where are they not working, where do we need data that we don't have, or where do we need to do some data modeling or cleanup that we haven't done previously. It provides a pretty advantageous model, and I've talked to many people over the years about this and had it confirmed that this is a pretty beneficial model, because what it does is it eliminates the gap between IT and what the business really needs, right? The engineering team aren't having to sit in business conversations with with relatively fuzzy requirements. That is translated to them through my team to a greater or lesser extent. And likewise, the IT and the engineering team aren't out there building things with the hope that someone will adopt them, because we're effectively working with them to help determine that pipeline so that they only build stuff that we know is going to be used and needed. So it means that for a really quite small team, actually, we can have a lot of impact within the organization. Like I said, I've had conversations with other BI leaders and BI teams over the years, and I think our team as a proportion of the business size is significantly smaller than a lot of business intelligence teams. And yet I think our impact, because it's consolidated, we've been able to keep pretty material within the company, and still operate with enterprise level business intelligence systems without having to scale the team too much more. And I think it really does offer an interesting perspective for the analyst and the engineer working on this, and it really does form a more productive working relationship over time.
Yeah, that's really a cool model. Now, you're a deeply technical person. Take us back in time. When and why in your life did you first become interested in technology? And then more recently, what are the main data analytics shifts that you've seen and that you've been involved in?
Yeah, I am relatively technical. I think deeply. I hope I live up to that. Maybe I wouldn't like to try and claim that. But yeah, no, I am interested in technology. When did I get interested in technology? You'd have to go well back. I remember, growing up in the 80s and having, the Amstrad 128K, machines, and typing in some basic programming language to make little, Space Invaders games. Right. And I was that kid. So I guess the answer in part goes, well, way back into my childhood. More relevantly, I guess, I went through science degrees. I sort of branched into philosophy degrees, interestingly enough, and then ultimately came back through when I went into the workplace. I went into marketing and gradually moved into sort of marketing analytics and marketing decision making, and then just shifted more and more into the business intelligence space over time. Right. I guess the first time I was focused wholly on analytics was I was working for a startup in Boston called Worldwinner. It was acquired by the Game Show Network while I was there. This is back in 2008, 2009. We were working with big business objects and crystal reports and those technologies back then. And I guess that would really be the first iteration. Since I really got the reins of the systems and the sort of the in a position to make decision-making capabilities, that really started with when I moved to Ebates in around 2014. And we've gone through what I think is 3 stages of evolution there since I joined. So when I joined the company, we had been running off SQL Server machines. I think a very standard paradigm. We had Postgres databases in production. We copied the data over into SQL Server, did a little bit of cleanup and ETL processing, had a SQL Server analysis services cube sitting on top, which we fed into Excel. And, we were running on the single SQL Server machines. As I was coming on board, that system was starting to kind of creak at the edges a little bit. Our need had gone beyond what the biggest SQL Server machine could handle at the time. And we were starting to do what I think a lot of people do, which is we were splintering the hardware. So we were now running multiple different SQL Server machines and trying to keep for different types of workloads, and we were trying to keep the data synced. And we were starting to see issues with, well, that's fine, except, until you need to blend the data back together, and then it's kind of a pain. Or, well, we replicated this ETL change onto these 2 machines, but we forgot it on this third one, or we forgot that there was this special case on this third one, and now it's not working. Or, the third machine's smaller than the other 2, so code that runs on 2 of them doesn't run on the third one. And, I think anyone that's tried to manage that kind of multi-instance, single machine implementation for a meaningful business intelligence stack knows what I'm talking about. It gets pretty painful pretty quickly. At a certain point, we decided that we were going to shift into a clustered environment, and we looked at the standard players in that space, including Teradata at the time. We actually decided, though, that we were going to shift into Hadoop. And if you go out and Google my name, you'll still probably find quite a lot of content out there with my name plastered on articles about how we shifted Ebates onto Hadoop. And we did. And I think, this was, I don't know how many companies actually managed to go that entire route, but we did. We shifted all of our business intelligence activities onto Hadoop at an enterprise level. We were serving data lakes, data marts, data warehouse, and reporting, as well as various other ETL functions off a Hadoop cluster. And we had it kind of working, honestly. And that really became sort of our phase 2. The difficulty we ran into there was just maintaining that architecture in the long run. Hadoop was a critical phase in the evolution of business intelligence and being able to scale business intelligence platforms up to modern data volumes and modern data uses. But the overhead we were finding, at least, and I'll speak just for our company, as a medium-sized company, we were finding the overhead of trying to buy enough servers, manage those servers, manage the software layer on top, manage concurrency issues and hard drives and switches and so on, was becoming a real distraction from our core focus, which was to get the right data to the right people at the right time. That's always been our core mantra. And we were finding more and more that we were just becoming hardware diagnostic teams. And that really wasn't where we wanted to be. So we did start looking for alternatives. The Rakuten Rewards organization at the time was also looking to shift into the cloud. So we started analyzing, the big cloud vendor platforms for business intelligence, and ran side-by-side testing on the major players in that space, and ultimately ended up deciding to move into Snowflake. That was back in 2018. We did our sort of full-scale POC. We decided we liked what we saw and shifted the rest of our technology in 2019, meaning that by the end of 2019, we were fully off Hadoop. And we were into what I think of as phase 3 of this journey, which is entirely on Snowflake. Another way of putting that, I guess, is you've got that traditional shift from going from single point machines into a clustered architecture, into a cloud clustered architecture. I think the bit that we may be a bit unusual in, I'm not saying unique, but maybe a bit unusual in, is that we actually did sort of complete the migration completely at each of those phases. We were completely on Hadoop and completely out of SQL Server, and then now we're completely on Snowflake, and we have no single instance or on-premise stuff left.
That's to be congratulated. I mean, you hear stories about companies launching these huge initiatives and ultimately failing. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I would be remiss if I didn't call out the engineering team I work with is phenomenal, and really gets the majority of the credit on really making it possible for us to do that. I mean, sure, there was work on the analytics side and a lot of rebuilding to do, but really the engineers have to get the credit for making that possible.